Thank you all very much. It's good to see you all. Joan and I are happy to be back here in Portage County, where her family started many years ago. This is a mixed occasion for me because, as so many people have already talked about, we had Ted Kennedy's passing this last week and his funeral yesterday in Boston. I was there, and I just got back into town about an hour and a half ago. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most inspiring events that I've ever participated in. But at the same time, there were pockets of some of the most ugly aspects of American politics at that funeral mass. As we drove from the airport to the church on our buses, you had thousands of thank you Teddy signs, some of them handmade, some of them printed, that most people were carrying as they stood along the route that the buses were traveling in very heavy rain. But then you also had some of the slimiest things I've ever seen. For instance, you had a number of posters with Obama's picture on it, and it simply said, "The Beast, the Beast." There's something very sick about people who at a funeral will engage in that kind of conduct. And that's not the only place that we've seen that kind of conduct this year. And I just want to talk for a few moments about what I think Teddy Kennedy would say if he were here today, trying to give us a guide about which way to go in the future. There are two main issues that are confronting President Obama and the Congress these days. The first is the issue of how to resurrect this economy, which is causing excruciating damage and pain to millions of Americans. I sometimes think that some of our Republican friends have the attention span of a Cocker Spaniel, or at least the memory like the Cocker Spaniel. I want you to just think back to the last 3 months of last year. We were losing 1 million full-time jobs every month. We lost 3.5 million jobs, full-time jobs, in the last 3 months of last year. And in addition, the world's credit markets were seizing up and closing down, and we were getting call after call after call from businesses saying, "My God, what can you guys do? I can't get credit from my local bank." And the country was in a near panic situation. And so President Bush asked the Congress to take some actions to enable him to stabilize the financial sector of the economy. The Congress turned that down the first time. And then after the stock market plunged another 570 points, it reconsidered and gave Bush some of the tools that he needed to try to stabilize the financial sector. Obama then came into office in January, and he wanted to do the same thing for Main Street that Bush and the Congress had done for Wall Street and the financial sector of the economy. And so we put together an economic package to try to respond to the worst economic crisis since the 30s. Now, normally in a recession, when people lose their jobs and the economy sags, what happens is that the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates, and that will stimulate housing sales, It will stimulate auto sales, and those two sectors will lead the economy out of the doldrums. This time around, that option wasn't available because the auto industry and the housing industry were in shambles. And so the only device that we had to try to restart the economy, to try to soften the blow that was hitting so many people, to try to reduce the number of people who were losing their jobs each month, was to use government investment. And so that's what we did. We devoted 1/3 of that economic recovery package to tax cuts. And then we used the other 2/3 to do a variety of things. First of all, we wanted to put people directly to work through construction. And so we appropriated over $100 billion for highways, for bridges, for airports, for broadband, you name it. Programs that would put people to work in construction over the next 2 years. Second, we tried to stabilize the state's economy. Governor Doyle told me that without the action taken by the Congress on that front, that he would have had to impose an increase in the sales tax across the board, and he would have had to make budget cuts 3 times as deep as those that the legislature had to make just a few months ago. So we pumped a significant amount of money in to stabilize state budgets. We tried to help families who were hit the hardest by the recession by expanding unemployment compensation, by helping people to keep their health care benefits and the like. We tried to also make some decent long-term investments that could finally get us out of the rut of having to shovel $400 billion a year out of our pockets into the pocket of the oil-producing countries around the world because we've had such a lousy energy policy for the last 20 years. And then we've tried to strengthen education. We put a lot of money into elementary and secondary education, try to make up for the fact that unemployed people were not able to pay their property taxes. And we didn't want to see education take a big hit because of the sag in the economy. We added $600 to the maximum Pell Grant for families trying to send their kid to college during a tough time. And then we looked at other needs in the economy, including expanding healthcare personnel training to produce more doctors, primary care specialists to produce more nurses and the like, because we know we're going to pass some kind of health care reform, and we need to expand the capacity of the system to deal with that. Now, after we did that, we received mounts of criticism. People say, oh my God, that's such an expensive package that people put together. Well, I've got a deal for you. You show me a smaller problem, I'll show you a smaller solution. But you cannot have a tinker-toy response to a major economic problem. Other people will say, well, look at the deficit. My God, look at the deficit. This is going to kill us. We all understand that this kind of spending has to be temporary. It cannot go on long-term, or it will cause long-term deficit increases, and it will cause inflation. We all understand that. But the fact is that right now, if we don't do something to continue to prime the pump, to get the economy moving again, we're going to have millions and millions of additional people unemployed, far above the numbers that we'll have unemployed if as we're doing what we're doing. And so I make no apology for refusing to sit on the sidelines and just let the economy do whatever it was going to do. We should have learned the hard way, going all the way back to 1932. That is not acceptable. And what we are trying to do, bottom line, in this whole package, is to avoid the problem that Roosevelt ran into in 1937. When Roosevelt took over in 1932, we had 25% unemployment.